There's a particular kind of tiredness that doesn't just hit your muscles, it soaks into your bones. That was me by the time I crawled into bed, dog-tired and half-dead from a day that seemed to drag on forever. One of those days where nothing goes right. Work was a disaster. My phone kept buzzing with useless notifications, and I had a headache big enough to name. I didn't even bother pulling off my shoes. I just let myself fall into the mattress, sinking into the bed and immediately drifting off into a deep sleep. At first, I didn't know I was dreaming. It felt so real, too real, but not. I was standing in my house. Something was off. The walls looked the same. The layout was right, but it felt wrong. Like when you wake up at a friend's place and for a moment think you're at home only to realize nothing quite fits. It was my house, but it didn't belong to me. There's a door. It was at the end of the hallway, tucked into the corner where nothing should have been. The wood was old and cracked, the color of dried mud, with a brass knob dulled by time. I stood there, heart thudding in my chest, telling myself not to touch it. Every instinct in me screamed, leave it alone. Go back to bed. Pretend you didn't see it. But dreams have a way of pulling you towards the worst possible decision, don't they? I gripped the handle, turned it, and the door swung open with a groan. Inside, the first thing I noticed was the smell, faint but sharp, like a barn on a hot day mixed with the faintest whiff of rotten straw. It wasn't overwhelming, but it crawled into my nose and stuck there. And then I saw them. The corpses. Headless bodies lay scattered across the room like broken mannequins. They were in piles, some tangled together, others lying alone, as if dropped carelessly by whoever put them there. No blood anywhere, just gray, waxy flesh stretched over lifeless limbs. Men, women, even children, all headless, every last one of them, and arranged in an awful way that made my skin crawl, like someone had set them up, giving some of them realistic poses, but others were surreal and grotesque, put up at awkward angles. I couldn't breathe. My pulse jackhammered in my ears, and my legs felt like they belonged to someone else. I should have run. I know that now, but it was like the door wasn't just a door. It was a mouth, and I was already halfway down its throat. Then I saw it. It stood at the far end of the room, half hidden in shadows. At first I thought it was another body, propped against the wall, but then it moved. A slow, deliberate shift, like a snake uncoiling. It was tall, so tall, its head nearly brushed the ceiling. Its skin was the color of swamp water, cracked and leathery, like it had spent too long in the sun, but it was a necklace that stopped my heart cold. Dozens of shrunken heads dangled from a thick knotted cord slung around its neck. They swayed as the thing moved, the way wind chimes sway in the breeze. The faces were withered and pale, their eyes and mouths sewn shut with black thread. From the necks, coarse straw poked out as though stuffing a scarecrow. The heads weren't just shriveled, they were ruined, like dolls left out in the rain and forgotten for years. The thing noticed me. Its head cocked to the side, curious, like a crow sizing up a bit of roadkill, and then it smiled, or something close to it. The grin stretched far too wide, a lipless curve that revealed teeth as jagged as broken glass. It raised one long bony finger and pointed it at me. A new one for the collection. The voice was raspy, dry and brittle, as if it hadn't spoken in 1,000 years. The words slithered through the air like smoke, curling around my mind. I stumbled back, panic setting in, but my legs felt sluggish. It was like trying to run underwater. The thing took a step closer. The necklace of heads swung, and I swear I heard them whisper, soft, faint, as if the dead mouths were trying to warn me. The heads rocked gently, brushing together with a dry rustle. No, I whispered, though my voice cracked on the word, please. The creature only smiled wider, and I felt something shift, something cold and invisible tugging at me from the inside. My head, my mind. The feeling was impossible to describe, but it felt like someone was yanking at the seams that held me together, trying to tear my soul loose. I reached up, desperate to hold on to myself, but it was already too late. The world tilted, and I was outside my body. could see myself standing there, slack-jawed and glassy-eyed, while my head dangled from that horrible necklace. My shriveled face stared back at me. My eyes were sewn shut and my mouth was stitched into a grotesque grin. I wanted to scream, but I had no mouth left to scream with. The creature's voice slithered into my mind, cold and amused.
Now you fit.
I woke up gasping, my head thudding so hard I thought it might burst. Sweat soaked my clothes, and I clutched my neck, making sure my head was still there. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely sit up. But something was wrong. The room felt different. The air was too still, too heavy, like the dream hadn't let go of me entirely. A faint smell hung in the air, straw, dry and sour, just like in the dream. My pulse quickened as I scanned the room, every shadow seeming too deep, every corner too quiet. In the mirror across the room, everything looked normal, just my reflection sitting there, pale and wide-eyed. But then it smiled. I didn't. My reflection's grin stretched slowly, unnaturally, just like the creature's. It leaned forward, one finger pressed against its lips, and it whispered, "Shh." Before I could move, the room was filled with the sound of straw rustling, soft and insistent, like dry leaves caught in the wind. And then from somewhere deep in the dark, I heard it.
A new one for the collection.
And this time, I knew I wasn't waking up.